Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Randolph Soundstage. I'm Randolph Timm, and in this series we're going to explore the world of sound. We're going to study what sound is, how it's made, how we hear it, and how to control it. This is my little home studio where concepts are born, experimented with, and ironed out before it's being taken into the studio. Remember, time is money, and studio time is real money.
Yeah, darling, gonna.
In this video, we'll explore the physics of sound, how it's created, how it's transmitted to our ears, and how we perceive it. We'll explore the characteristics of sound that are important to our production of sound in the studio and on the stage, and the characteristics and how they affect how we set up the stage, how we set up the studio, and how we play our music, to sell the band and to sell the act. In future videos, we will examine the recording process, the mixing process, setting up the stage, processes and techniques involved on stage and in the act and in the studio. I hope you'll join us for the future videos, and we'll be using what we learn here as a foundation so that we know what we're doing and we know what we're talking about when we walk into the studio and set up the stage. So with that said, here's all about sound. Sound is a compression wave that moves through medium. We hear it generally from the air, and the compression wave, if you drop a pebble into a bowl of water or a lake, you'll see wave crests that move out from the point of impact of the pebble with the water. And this is created by the pebble hitting the water and creating a compression wave. Well, the water doesn't really like to compress all that well, and there's not too much holding it on top to keep it compressed, so the wave rises up from the compression. You drop the pebble, it hits the water, it creates this compression wave that moves out, and as the compression wave moves out, the top of the water crests up as the compression wave moves. Well, the same thing happens in air, except for it's a different medium. The compression wave is caused by vibrating objects. The object can be caused to vibrate by striking it with a hammer, as in a bell, or plucking a string with your finger or a pick, or hitting the drum head with a drumstick. These all cause vibrations in the medium, and these vibrations are transmitted into the air as sound waves, the compression waves. Now the compression waves, a sound wave, moves through in air at 25 degrees. I believe Wikipedia says somewhere around 1,100 or 1,200 feet per second. I've calculated it out once, and it comes out around 720 miles per hour, which is faster than we drive. That's Mach 1. So an airplane runs up to 720 miles an hour. If it's flying through the air at 720 miles an hour, that's about Mach 1. Now, the sound wave has a number of characteristics or components that are of interest to us. The two basic characteristics or components of a sound wave is, number one, frequency, and number two, amplitude or level. In frequency, we have what we call the fundamental, which is the basic, the lowest frequency of that sound wave, okay? It's called the fundamental, and it's a sine wave. All sound waves are composed of a fundamental sine wave and other sine waves, which are harmonics of that fundamental. And the amplitude and the phase of the harmonics will create the characteristics of a particular sound. Is it a trumpet? Is it a flute? Is it a drum beat? Is it a cymbal? Now, the harmonic is simply a multiple of the fundamental. So the second harmonic of a 1 kilohertz sine wave, or a 1 kilohertz fundamental, would be 2 kilohertz. The third harmonic would be 3 kilohertz. Fourth harmonic of 1 kilohertz fundamental would be 4 kilohertz and on and on and on. So it's the amplitude and the phasing of those harmonics that give a sound a particular tone or voice. So the thing to note here is that frequency determines the pitch or the note that we hear, okay? The fundamental frequency, not the harmonics, just the fundamental frequency determines the pitch, the note that we hear. We've divided the spectrum up into octaves, and each octave is exactly twice the frequency of the previous octave. So high C is twice the frequency of middle C, which is twice the frequency of low C. Low C is half the frequency of middle C. The octaves have been divided into half steps, 12 half steps to make an octave. The standard frequency for the scale is A440. Now that's the A above middle C, and its frequency is 440 hertz. It's a logarithmic scale. Each half step is exactly 1.059463094 times the previous half step. So C sharp is 1.59, we'll call it 1.06. C sharp is 1.06 above C, the frequency is. So figuring A sharp above C would be 466 466 cycles. We'll delve into the frequency spectrum a little more in future episodes when we get into things like mixing, EQs, dropouts, feedbacks, stage sets, etc. But for now, we'll move on to the other characteristic of sound that we're interested in, amplitude. Here again, we use a scale that is a logarithmic scale and not a linear scale. The scale is decibels, or dB for short. You hear dB kicked around. Deci is 10 or 1/10, and a bell is a unit named after Ma Bell, Alexander Graham Bell. 1 decibel, I believe, is considered the threshold of human hearing. It's the softest sound that the human ear can perceive. The decibel in acoustics, we use what we call a sound pressure level, and that is the intensity of the compression wave. The sound pressure level, and we have meters called SPL, sound pressure level meters, that can measure that. The human ear is not sensitive equally across the spectrum. It's much less sensitive to higher frequencies and the very lower frequencies, I believe. Don't quote me on the lower frequencies. Than it is at 1 kilohertz, which we consider to be a center frequency or a standard frequency to measure levels at. Anyway, the amplitude is the distance between the highest point on the peak of the waveform, and the lowest point on the waveform. And as that is increased, and that's a representation of the sound pressure level. Okay, it's important to recognize something here. The decibel scale is a logarithmic scale, and it's not just used in acoustics, it's used in a wide variety of different scientific fields that deal in large variances of numbers. We are primarily concerned with the electronics use of decibels and the acoustics use of decibels. And they're 2 different scales, 2 completely different applications of the decibel, okay? Folks, I'd like to introduce everybody to a little instrument that every sound person should have. You can get it from the Play Store. It's not very expensive, but it's what we call an oscilloscope. And here's what it looks like. Check 1, 2. Check 1, 2. This displays the waveforms. This is the sound that you hear, the waveform that we've just been talking about. And I'm going to give you a little demonstration here. I've got the MIDI system set up to play an overdriven guitar for a little bit, for a long, long note, and then a few short ones or shorter ones. This is an overdriven guitar from a General Meaty patch. You see it? I hope you enjoyed this piece of Randolph soundstage, and if I imparted a piece of useful information or sparked an idea, well, that's even better. Future videos in this series will explore other aspects of sound and sound electronics that are essential to consistently setting up a stage and getting the sound that works on stage or in the studio. Now you can subscribe to this channel or get notifications when a new video gets posted, around one a week hopefully, or you can check back to the Randolph Sound Studio playlist if you wish. Thanks for checking it out, and I hope to see you back soon. Feel free to check out the other videos and playlists that you see here, and please be kind.